The title of this panel is "It is in our hands to shape the future." And I'd say that we have the choice to make it a good future or a bad one. Since 1989, humans have caused more greenhouse gas emissions than in all of the human history before then. And this is largely due to the enormous increase in consumption that has taken place in the last few decades. And consumption, by the way, that we're all part of. And that's depressing. But it also points to an optimistic possibility. If we can do so much damage in just 35 years, perhaps we can dramatically change the course and reverse at least some of that damage in the next 30 or so before that 2050 deadline. But to do so, we'll have to work just as hard at reducing consumption, ending the extractive consumption that Kate has spoken about, and undoing the inequality that Amanda has described, just as hard as we have worked on increased consumption in the last years. And to do this, we need to change the discourse. We need to change the narrative. We need a paradigm shift, to coin a phrase. But to shift paradigms, we need to know not only what is wrong with the current paradigm, we need a new one to shift to. And Kate has outlined the start of another narrative, but that isn't widely understood or accepted. And I think it's still hard for most of us to imagine what society would look like if it was adopted. But my point is, isn't this what theatre does? It excels at imagining different futures. It asks what if, and then undertakes a thought experiment with the audience where we collectively explore the set of circumstances that what if proposes. And we're privileged because when people buy a theatre ticket, they're not only giving us their money, they're also giving us their time, and they're lending us their brains. And more than this, they agree when they come to the theatre to work collectively with all the other people in the audience and on the stage and behind it to think about the things that we ask them to think about. And that's important, as climate change isn't going to be solved by individual actions, but by collective change. And as you all know, audiences are cleverer and think faster than individuals on their own. So society needs us to help those brains think together to change the narrative. But we can't change the national narrative if we don't change the internal one. So what does this mean for directors, practically? I'm going to take a couple of examples from the Green Book, Theatre Green Book, which may seem like production manager things, but are really about the leadership of the director. The Green Book says, turn the white card meeting into a green card meeting. This sets the tone for everyone. And you doing this says this is important. This is intrinsic to this production, and this is the route we'll follow, even when it leads to difficult decisions. And the counterfactual to that is if you don't stress this approach or you leave that leadership to someone else, is that you're licensing people to avoid those difficult decisions, which we know will come up in any production. If we're not doing the right thing, we're doing the wrong thing. The Green Book also reminds us of the importance of planning. Avoiding last-minute decisions reduces transport and waste. And I worked for 5 seasons at Pitlochry Festival Theatre, which is just terrifying. Everything moves very fast. You're rehearsing in repertoire, 2 different shows a day. Once you've rehearsed a scene, you may not go back to it for some weeks. You can't stop. You can't chop and change. You need a plan. But I found that this doesn't stop you and your actors innovating, imagining, and playing. If you plan well, if you use your time well, deciding on your design early, talking about props early on, means that the actors have time to get used to them in rehearsal, work with them, and play with them. I'm telling you stuff you know again, but everybody feels confident if you're confident and planned, and then you can create and innovate together. That's the internal narrative. More externally, what if we say as directors, we're particularly looking for writers, composers, designers, staff, actors who want to use climate change as a core purpose, core feature of their work, the lens through which they see it. New people will pop up who you didn't know, but who now want to work with you because you're interested in climate change. And a lot of the most interesting artists, I think, are interested in climate change. And you'll be creating an authorizing environment for the people you do know to say, actually, I've been waiting for somebody to say that, and I want to work with you, and I want to bring this up with you. You'll be encouraging others to do the same. And more externally yet, theatre directors can be at the heart of climate change more widely. At Creative Carbon Scotland, we have our Embedded Artist project where we work with local authorities and others to involve artists of all disciplines in climate change projects. And this is not about creating art, but bringing our whole set of skills, ways of working, ideas, knowledge, and contacts to bear on the enormous challenges that those projects pose. Because no one actually knows how to get to net zero or adapt to the impacts of climate change. They need our imagination, our creativity, our ability to experiment, to get things wrong and to experiment again, and our ways of working with vastly different people. And I found that my ability as a director to influence a diverse and complex group of people with different ideas, knowledge, baggage, emotions, and experience, and bring them together to create something is valued by big climate change projects. For a project called Clyde Rebuilt, where we were shaping the future of 1/3 of Scotland's population, I was operating as an artist on the steering group working with the board, which was made up of 8 local authorities, 2 universities, and sundry environmental agencies. These are big projects, and they're exciting projects to work on as an artist. I'm going to finish by going back to theatre itself. In his terrific book, which I really recommend, The Great Derangement, the Indian-American novelist Amitav Ghosh argues that one of the reasons artists have found it difficult to address climate change in their work is that it requires thinking and working on an epic scale, because climate change works across decades and it spans continents. And speaking on this stage, where I grew up in southeast London, I've seen so much terrific epic theatre. I see this as a fantastic opportunity. What theatre director doesn't want to tell big stories, whether on a big stage like this one or are crammed into and blowing the roof off a tiny space? So it's in our hands to shape the future. And what a thrilling opportunity that is. Thank you.